Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to host this talk by Glaucio Pessoa, who will be leading our live with the theme In the Company of Wolves. Let's all
Hello.
give Glaucio a very warm welcome, and please allow me to introduce him before he starts his presentation. Glaucio Pessoa has been active in the Spiritist movement for over 41 years. He is a co-founder of the Caritas Spiritist Group in Atlanta, Georgia. Formerly, he served as communications director for the United States Spiritist Federation and as vice president of the Christian Spiritist community of Atlanta. He has a special interest in the dissemination of Spiritism in English, especially via technology solutions. Glaucio holds master's degrees in both business administration and electrical engineering, and currently works as a senior technology program manager focused on machine learning and cloud computing. Please take this opportunity right now to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. Glaucio has reserved time to address your comments and questions once he concludes his presentation. And so, I present Glaucio Pessoa.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Good morning, everybody. Good evening. It's always good for us to be here and have conversations and talk about the gospel and to review a lot of the teachings that Spiritism provides to us. So, yeah. So, our conversation today is going to be about described in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, in which Jesus explains to us that, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be you therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So before we start with the commentary, I'd like to share a tale with you. And this one is from the book Tales from This Life and the Next. As far as I know, this book is not in English yet. Hopefully, it is going to be translated. It's basically a collection of short stories with Spiritist teachings. And this one is titled The Test of the Virtues. And the story goes like this. And by the way, I'm not going to read the story, I'm going to provide you with the abridged version. A mentor sends his disciple, who was a scholar of the prophets, to a city suffering from vice and illness. And the mentors instructed his disciple to help the inhabitants. 20 years pass after his emissary goes, but the situation of the city is not getting better. On the contrary, over the past 20 years, it just got worse and worse. Then the mentor calls the disciple back and trying to understand what's going on. I mean, I sent you there to help all those people, and I see no results. On the contrary, things are not getting any better. The disciple then explains that during those 20 years, the disciple had adopted a ascetic type of life, so a very strict life for himself. So one of the things that he did was to isolate himself in the countryside and was living in complete silence and prayer. So basically, he was living somewhere in the boonies and didn't talk to nobody. He was just praying, and the disciple only dressed in white and was only eating very healthy food, just herbs, and was sleeping, believe it or not, in a bed of nails without covers. And the whole point of that was the disciple wanted to be an example of virtue to all those people. And the mentor was listening to all that account, and he acknowledges that the disciples' dedication and intentions were good, but he was critical of the lack of practical action and connection. So basically, yeah, the disciple was trying super hard to do all these things. But how was he benefiting anybody? He wasn't even benefiting himself by sleeping in improper conditions. And also, the disciple also wasn't connecting to other people. So how can you try to do all those good things, but you're not interacting? There's no rapport with that population that, according to the story, was in a bad situation. So, uh, so basically, even though his practice was with similar virtual practices, but they prevented the disciple from being of help to anyone. And as that conversation was going on, a white horse, it actually was a wild, in the story, it was a wild white horse, arrives into the location, and the horse was carrying a wounded traveler that the horse had rescued. And then the mentor, seeing that the white horse coming in, he points to the similarity and differences between the attitude of the animal and the attitude of the disciple. So, of course, the wild horse was living in a natural setting. Of course, it was in silence all the time. Was was white, all right, and it was being a white horse, had no garments. Also, only ate herbs and slept exposed. But yet, besides all of those things, also was able to help someone by rescuing the injured traveler. So at that point, the mentor leaves the disciple to contemplate the message and goes to tend to the wounded traveler. And again, leaving that message that it is a big difference between just being pious, just pity, and having genuine service, and emphasize the emptiness there is of virtue without action. So after this story is a very good segue again to this particular verse here. So again, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be you therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So Jesus was describing to his disciples. That was one of the last talks that Jesus had with his disciples, and it was kind of like a pep talk. Of course, he is about to end that physical phase here on earth amongst us. So he was now telling his disciple, "Hey, get ready for what comes next for you." And it is most likely, just like anybody in that situation, I will be in that situation. I will still not be able to grasp the magnitude of the mission that ahead of me. But and most likely the disciples still were not, did not quite understand. And we see also that Jesus had similar warnings, similar to that one. During the Last Supper, he provides also some similar advice, and it's described in John chapter 15, verses 18 and 20, and John chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. And here, during the Last Supper, he indicates to his disciples, if the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. So, again, a preparation for all the difficulties that the apostolate would bring for them. And also here in John 16, verses 1 through 4, he indicates that all this I have told you so that you will not fall away. So basically, I'm going to forewarn you so you don't fail. They will put you out in the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think they are offering a service to God. Again, indication of all the struggles that will come for them to evangelize the gospel. They will do such things because they have not known the Father or me. So he's indicating that people will do those bad things to them, not because they were necessarily evil, but because they are not truly understanding the message, and especially this new renewal message that the gospel is bringing. And finally, I have told you this so that when their time comes, you will remember that I warned you about them. I did not tell you this from the beginning because I was with you. So again, he was giving this full warning, kind of like a pep talk as well. Um, but this is not the kind of conversation that you have with weak people. Sometimes we have this, we mix up being a lamb and being a nice person with being weak, and that's not necessarily the case. You may be somebody who is underserved and be a strong person as far as your character and your personality and how you deal with the challenges, especially as a Christian. Or you might be someone who's overly assertive and actually be a very insecure person, very weak inside. So those recommendations, they were actually, he was not indicating that his disciples were weak, especially as referring to them as lambs. On the contrary, he was referring to them as strong lambs or strong emissaries. So nobody would send vulnerable sheep into a den of wolves. The sheep that are going to survive, that are exposed the danger, are the strongest ones, are the wisest ones. So so again, so actually, it was he was indicating that in the work it would be necessary for them to have tenderness, but also magnanimity, and not too weak and indecision. So a lot of times as Christians, we mix those things up. We see that you being tender and you being magnanimous might be a sign of weakness. No, it is not. It is, on the contrary, is actually a sign of strength and a size an indication of decisiveness. So it requires that somebody be faithful to one's values, to be strong in one's values, but also that one be compassionate, because you do, as you're interacting with others, compassion is very important. Wisdom, super important, and to be courageous for us to, again, to stay true to our values and to be have compassion even to those like Jesus was referring to, most likely out of ignorance, that might understand our intentions and do not act in the way that we would expect. So, and also, yeah, so that those are the components. So faith, compassion, wisdom, and courage. So again, none of those things can be associated with weakness. And Jesus was preparing his disciples because they're going to be sent into spiritual conflict. There will be a lot of misunderstandings, and but they will not be sent to be slaughtered. Again, Jesus indicates himself that he was giving them advice so that they would not fail. On the contrary, so that they could be beacons of light, so that they can provide guidance and sow the seeds of spiritual renewal among those who are lost in darkness. And I like, when you think about a seed, right? Sometimes our expectation is that whatever good we do would provide fruits right away. That people, that when we try to extend our hand to somebody, that individual, especially somebody that is in error, or at least that we see as somebody who's in error, that individual is going to acknowledge it right away and take action right away. But it works differently. It works as seeds that you're planting. And again, some seeds they produce, and you can harvest right in a very short period of time. But some seeds they take years um, to um, to grow. So, and the same thing applies to our good deeds and our examples to people, and the way we may try to help others. That is going to be like a seed, because that individual might not recognize our diligence right away, our good deeds, It might take that individual days, months, years, centuries even. We're mortal souls. We're always progressing, and whatever lessons we learn behind, they will always help us in the future. And we should never forget that also all the people they have planted seeds in us. Whatever we have, whatever the good things, a lot of the good things that we have today, we accomplish. As you know, of course, we're all so imperfect, but a lot of the good things that we know today and that we do today, they were inspired by all the spirits that they helped us, even in this particular reincarnation or in our previous reincarnations. So there was somebody who planted a little seed in us. So in my particular case, of course, I'm a very imperfect spirit. My disclaimer right now is that I'm very imperfect and I'm full of shortcomings, and I have so many flaws. But I still remember when I was a little kid, and when I used to attend youth evangelization, spiritist classes for children. So I remember those lessons, and I remember those teachers when they were trying to explain spiritist concepts, of course, at my level as a child. And but again, somebody planted a seed in me. Now, what happened to that seed? Then it's up to me to produce the real good fruits. But somebody that was deposited that seed in me when I was a little kid, and it's funny because I still remember some of those lessons. And that's a segue for me also to encourage all the parents out there to make sure spiritual, especially if you're spiritist parent, to make sure that your children is receiving guidance. The Spiritist Youth and Children Youth Program is a great way to provide support to children and teenagers as they are growing and they're developing in this particular life. So that was my segue for that. So again, so if we believe in God, and if we want to be followers of Jesus, so it is not just sufficient. Praying is super important. Praying gives us strength. Praying gives us support. But Jesus always everything. All the conversation from Jesus was all about action. And Jesus indicates here, he says, "Go, I'm sending you." So that means action. So that doesn't mean that you're gonna be waiting, right, for others to come to you. You're gonna go and help others. You're gonna go and interact with other individuals. And Jesus says, "I'm sending you." So that's a direction that we are receiving to move forward. And faith requires action, therefore, not just devotion. Of course, it's great for me to for us to have faith and to be connected with God and to worship God. That actually one of the natural laws of the universe. However, it does require action, and Jesus' message is always about action. And it's not easy. It's more like a battlefield if you want to be a Christian, especially if you want to be a true Christian, a true follower of the teaching. So I can be we're so, as human beings, we're so used to labels. I can have this label of Christian, and I can have a super big label saying, "Hey, I'm a spiritist." But again, it is in my experiences on Earth that I will actually put those into practice. So, and that was the reminder here. And it's interesting that, of course, when Jesus was referring to wolves, and he doesn't make mention to that in the other passages um, in the Last Supper as well, in John 16, 1 through 4, and 18 through 20 as well, that this definition of of a wolf is not necessarily somebody that is evil, because in reality, we might think as the wolf as a dangerous animal, but a wolf is a wild animal. A wolf does not know any better. When the wolf is hungry, the wolf goes out and hunts. So it's basically an animal that is a predator. The predator tends to be more aggressive, but it needs to have the benefit of the doubt. The wolf does not know any better. So as we are interacting with people, we're interacting with people that do not know any better. There are people right now. So right now here in Atlanta, it's a Saturday morning. It's 11:21, and I'm here, and several of you are here. Brad, it was is here supporting us here as well. So and we're here, and we're trying to have a conversation about the gospel and about spiritism. Not everybody has the same kind of attitude, and again, so as we interact with people, we're going to interact with people that have different values, that have different agendas, different directives. So those people are wolves. I mean, they do not know any better. So as we're interfacing with them again, it requires this firmness on our values, but also the compassion that Jesus was referring to, and to be patient with others the same way also, because others need to be patient with us as well. um, Even though we can see ourselves as trying to be lambs, we still have a whole lot more of the wolf in us as well. So it is up to us to control our tendencies and actually to show our best, not to show the wolf side, even as dealing with wolves, but show this side of us, this compassionate side, this true Christian and Spiritist side that has a little bit of enlightenment. So whatever enlightenment we have, why not share with others? So basically, this, and also we have to. Jesus gives us a command. He was an imperative. I am sending you. So I am sending you. That is imperative. Um, and so we have to seek those who need our help, and not to wait for those to come to us. So we gotta be active. We gotta be putting in our contribution into the world, into the betterment in whatever we can do. Some of us can do some incredible, can accomplish some great things in science, in religion, in politics, what have you, in our community. Some of us can do it. Some of us can do, can do less or have a less of a mission. But again, regardless of what we do, let's seek out what can be done and in what we can be of value to the universe. And it is quite interesting. Now, it is not easy, and we do complain a lot about the difficulties, and not to say the suffering, but think about the example that the Lord and His followers have provided to us. So when Jesus came, again, a very high, very a perfect spirit, the most perfect spirit to whoever incarnate on earth, the governor. Jesus is the governor of our planet. Um, so we see here that Jesus comes and goes through the cross, has to suffer cross, has to have to go through martyrdom, and so did their followers. But again, their example of that is important to us, because even with all the persecution that they faced, they remained steadfast in service, and never retreated from their mission. They never looked back, and they've never. Of course, there were drawbacks. There were moments of weakness, um, but for if you do the checks and balances, you're gonna see that, especially the disciples, they did not forfeit their mission. So again, that's the example for us. So, and the call of Christ, as far as that goes, remains, because we must go to the world, and we should not face the world as enemies, but ambassadors of peace of and eternal life. So the ambassadors of its good. So it's not that we're gonna go and forcefully try to change everybody else the same way that we cannot even change ourselves. I mean, we can change, but it takes time. But it's not something that happens overnight. So instead of us going into the world and being defensive about it, On the contrary, bring peace and show a good message. So Jesus was reminding us that we have to be both compassionate and unwavering in our service to Him and the world. There's a very interesting passage here. Emmanuel in the book, "The Way, the Truth, and the Life," he reminds us that, quote, "It is imperative to walk in the direction of the wolves, not as beast against beast, but as ambassador lambs, not as emissaries of death, but as givers of eternal life." So again, Emmanuel is reminding us the need for us to go where there's a need. So, and there's so much need in the world. We think about the material needs, but there's so much need of this one-on-one, so much need of the human interaction, but the positive, the constructive human interaction, and why not to say the the Christian and the spiritual human interaction. So, but not as beast against beast, right? Because if I'm, the world is, we live in a world of trials and atonements. So it is an aggressive world. We're still just a second order world on the scale. So on the scale of the evolution of the world, so it is tough. But again, am I going to be facing the world as a beast? Am I going to be interfacing with others as a wolf with all the aggression? Or should I be as a lamb? Because now I know better. Should I show that side of mine as the wolf, as the beast, this animal side? Or should I behave as a spirit that is trying to put into practice what he or she has been learning for centuries, not just as a spiritist here, but in all of our, not centuries, and thousands of years, as our process of evolution. So what I'm going to present, am I going to present the animal side of me, the primitive side, the instinctive, aggressive, defensive side of me, or am I going to show interface with others in an enlightened manner? And Emmanuel points out something very interesting: not as emissaries of death, but as givers of eternal life. And there is so much that we can extract from here, because again, we're not gonna be. That doesn't mean that we're going to be nullifying ourselves to others. On the contrary, we're going to be providing enlightenment. Where the Jesus, even though in the gospel we see struggles with Jesus, we see all the struggles with his disciples. The most important thing is that Jesus' message is not about death and is not about suffering. Of course, suffering comes into play just because of our level of development, but the message is a message of eternal life. Is a message that, hey, always look from things from a higher perspective, because that's what really matters for you. And again, givers of eternal life, you're going to be providing something good to others, and it is, why not? Well, if you're, of course, if you're a Christian, why not provide to others what the good things that Christianity has taught you? And especially if you're spiritist, why not share with others the gifts of enlightenment, of peace, that spiritism provides to us every day as we learn more, as we go through, quote unquote, our sufferings here on earth. What kind of comfort does spiritism offers us? A great comfort for us to go through the ups and downs of our lives, as we face them, not so much as spirits that are going to be just have one shot on earth, or even where there is with a materialistic view that this is the end. No, spiritism offers us this view that, hey, whatever years I spend on earth, may I spend here 7 years, 80 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, it doesn't really matter, because this is a moment, it's a short, brief point in time in my eternal life. So it's great for us to have this perspective and share that perspective with others, especially with our attitudes. I'd like also to comment a little bit on another passage here. It is Mark chapter 6, verse 31, and it's kind of a different twist, but it's not actually, it's sort of related. Uh, so in Mark 6:31, Jesus instructs his disciples, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." So, so basically, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest for a while. So basically, go to an isolated place, go to a quiet place to rest, to get some um, some repose. So here, this is kind of an interesting story in itself, because yes, so Jesus was, of course, with his disciples, and Jesus, he was preaching, and there was a large crowd around them, and they had not eaten yet. They hadn't had a chance to basically take a break to get a meal. And so Jesus said, "Okay, so let's go." And so they got on a boat, and then they crossed to the other margin. And the interesting part of it is that, as they, of course, as they're going, they're not fast enough, and now all the people, all the multitude of people, were actually they arrived at the other side before them. So the interesting part of the story here is that, and again, and that's when it's according to stories, there's 5,000 people there, and then Jesus continues preaching, but then there isn't enough food, and everybody's is hungry by now, and that's when you see the passage of the multiplication of the bread and fish. But regardless, and that's a conversation for some other time. But the most important thing here is that the plan, quote unquote, was to go to a quiet place where there was nobody. And yet, when they get there, they're surrounded by people. And this is very important. This, to me, is a very crucial part of the teaching, because being in a quiet place does not necessarily entail being by oneself, or being alone. Of course, it's great to be alone, to relax if you have a chance, and to do something that is really to allows you to rest for a while. But y- and then when Jesus and his disciples, they're there, they again, they're surrounded again. They're not alone. But what happens is that they are still in a quiet place. They still have a moment of reflection, even being in a crowd. So that the teaching is actually deeper than it seems just in the verse here, because it indicates to us that you can be in any circumstance that you might be. You might be surrounded by people, or you might be by yourself. You might be in an urban environment, in a rural environment. You might be in a very busy thoroughfare, or you might be somewhere in somewhere in nature with nature. What the peace and quiet that you're gonna have, this restful moment, is gonna be within yourself. You create that moment. So even though at face value you might say, Jesus was indicating to us that we should find a quiet place and isolate ourselves. No, on the contrary, the teaching here, and if you look at the whole context of this situation, is that again, this quiet place you're gonna find, it's inside of you, and you might be going through might be going through some very harsh circumstances, and you might find that peace within you, or you might be in a very pleasurable situation and you might still be struggling yourself. So this quiet place is for you to find in yourself, for you to nurture in yourself. And again, it does not contradict the whole idea of being in the company of wolves. On the contrary, it reinforces the fact that again, I can be with any company, with anybody, regardless of number of people, regardless also of the attitude of those around me, and I might still be in peace. There is a very interesting book, and I believe that it either has been translated yet, or it is in the process of being translated. It is called "Religion of the Spirits," and I love this book because it provides messages actually from the spiritual world, and in each chapter is a different message. I simply love this particular book. It's one of those spiritist books that has a teaching for every circumstance. I'll definitely it's definitely one of the ones that I definitely recommend. And in chapter 17, there is a commentary about Jesus and humility. And we see here again, Jesus is our model and our guide. And we see here that in Jesus' mission, he provided us with so many examples of what he was preaching. And we see, first of all, that Jesus indicates great humility by the simple fact that he reincarnated here amongst us. So, can you imagine? He's the governor of our planet, he's the most perfect spirit in our in a planet as a whole. If you combine both incarnate and disincarnate spirits, so he's like on the top of the echelon, but yet Jesus decided. Jesus was humble enough to reincarnate. He could have stayed up there and delegating the task of spreading the gospel to other higher order spirits that assist him. But no, but instead of that, he chose to humble himself by becoming human, by reincarnating, by not reincarnating, incarnating, because it only happened once in this particular planet, on Earth, and experience life from a physical standpoint. So this is an incredible example of how you can, I shouldn't say humble oneself, and for the greater good, in this case of humanity. Another interesting, two other interesting examples, and when you talk about the lambs and wolves. So Jesus was very wise when he used quote unquote strategic retreat, lack of a better word. When Jesus was faced with Herod's threat to his life as a child, Herod had a decree to um, to eliminate children, all the children, all the male children, because Herod was afraid that there would be basically uh, due to the prophecies, a king would be born. So Herod was afraid of that. So, but yeah, Jesus could have used again as a high spirit, even though Jesus was by physical standards, by our standards, was a baby. Jesus could use divine power to retaliate or to avoid that situation. There are so many subterfuges that could be used, but again, what happened? No, he just withdrew to safety. And also, when Jesus was challenged by religious authority, of course, later on in Jesus' mission, when Jesus was challenged by religious authorities in Jerusalem, so he didn't force any acceptance from anyone. He actually decided to move his ministry to other places and to talk to other people, to talk to those individuals who were receptive of his teaching. He also did a great job of outreach because, first of all, he did not condemn Mary Magdalene, despite her past and her errors, but he offered her acceptance and guidance. And Mary Magdalene did become, even though it's not well documented in the gospel, but Mary Magdalene was a very active um, follower, actually a very active disciple of Jesus as well. She had great contributions. So, but you see, it says like he gave her a chance because he saw the potential in her despite all of her past shortcomings. And another thing also is that he as far as ministering to the suffering, so directly he was interfacing directly and helping those who suffer by performing cures, both physical and emotional, mental, and moral, if you want to, moral healing as well to all of those. And again, he could have sent emissaries. He could have incarnated with a group of people, a larger group of people besides his disciples. He could have just sent his disciples, but instead, Jesus did it himself. Again, being amongst others and using all the healing power and his healing knowledge and his knowledge about fluids and about the how to manipulate fluids and energy and to help others. So again, and he was there again together with surrounded by crowds of people. And we see also forgiveness and patience because even though he knew that Jesus was, even though Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him, he still kept Judas close and demonstrate immense patience and forgiveness. As a matter of fact, one of the first things in the spiritual world, when Jesus returned to the spiritual world, one of the first things was to visit. He went down to the lower zones, to the what quote unquote umbral. He went down. He went to those zones and to visit Judas and to provide comfort to one of his failed disciples. So again, immense patience and forgiveness there. And he even prayed for his executioners when he was suffering in the cross as well. So that's an immense thing. How many times do we pray for those who cause us harm? It's a very difficult thing. And in Jesus' case, for those who cause him extreme physical harm, the execution by crucifixion was reserved only for criminals. It was very humiliating. It was a slow death, very uncomfortable death. And of course, Jesus' case was totally unjustified, totally unjust. And still, he prayed for his executioners. He prayed for all of those who contributed to that, even to the crowd, even to the people who were ungrateful and who denied him in those moments. But still, he prayed for those. And we see here also helping others to pursue their own redemptions because instead of punishing Saul for persecuting the early Christians, Jesus intervened personally with Saul and offered Saul, in this case Saul, and who afterwards became Paul, a transformative experience. So, and even so, we see here this example of commitment to redemption, commitment to forgiveness, commitment to acceptance to even those who at some point were quote unquote consider themselves our enemies as well. So we see again this amazing example that was provided by Jesus. So we see here that in Jesus' mission on earth, this true sense, there's this true nature of humility. So a lot of times we mix up humility with poverty and suffering. But actually, you can be active. You can be in a better position. You can be someone who's very assertive. In this case, Jesus was extremely assertive. And Jesus was extremely assertive, extremely wise as well, and to the point to be cunning, but not cunning in a bad manner, but cunning to understand the intentions very clearly of those around him. So we see here a spirit of very higher order, and that still shows that you can be humble, even though besides of your social status, besides of any circumstances that you're living on earth. So one's power is not about self-aggrandizing, but I am powerful as I serve others and as I uplift others. And a lot of times that requires personal sacrifice as well. But again, as we go through that experience, what Jesus taught us is that instead of that making us instead of apparently us nullifying ourselves, we're not necessarily nullifying ourselves. We're actually growing. We're by uplifting others. We're growing by helping others grow. So again, we should always use our own light to help others find theirs. So there was a very interesting comment again in the book Religion of the Spirits about Jesus's mission and especially his humility in the course of his incarnation on earth. What about us? What about our missions? All of us have missions, and according to the Spirit's book, um, in the chapter 10 of book 2. I have to look it up. Chapter 2, book 2, chapter 10. The spirits, they tell us about the missions of spirits, both incarnate and disincarnate. And we see here that all the spirits, they all receive missions. Again, if you're either incarnate or if you're an errant spirit, there are always missions. There's always something you can do to contribute. Now, the difference is the level of those missions they can be. They can be very diverse. They can range all the way from global events to personal guidance. So some spirits, they have these incredible missions to help the world, help a nation, or help the whole world. And some spirits, depending on the level of development and commitment and the needs of that spirit, some spirits, they just reincarnate, and the only mission they have is with themselves, just to guide themselves and become better. However, that purpose is always good. And a lot of times, as we are reincarnated, we might not truly understand what those missions are. But again, it's always for a good stance. And we just in the U.S. we just had our presidential elections. So just imagine, and again, regardless of ideology or political party, regardless, an individual who is elected to be the president, to oversee a nation, that's a great responsibility. So let's make sure we pray for whoever is currently in charge, whoever is being selected in a democratic process, not only the US, but any country, so that that individual may be enlightened and inspired in his or her decisions. So, I mean, it's a big mission. So we all have those. And we all have this chance, as we have our missions, we all have a chance to contribute to God's master plan. Again, some spirits, they are committed to a whole nation, to a continent, to a whole world. And some spirits, they at least, trying to better themselves. An amazing mission that most of us have is raising children. And it is so significant. And raising children, in my case, in my experience, it requires a lot of energy, a lot of patience, a lot of wisdom, but it is so important. It is truly the preparation. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, the Gospel according to Spiritism reminds us as parents our importance in guiding those reincarnated spirits as they start their mission on earth. That's our chance to provide a good direction for those spirits, even though the spirit that might reincarnate in my home might be a spirit that is as old as I am, or even much older from a spiritual standpoint, spirit that's been around for a longer period of time, but it's still, as that's been during childhood and during the teens, it's a chance for us to provide good guidance for those spirits. So it's an amazing mission that most of us have, and even if for those who do not have children, again, to interact with the children of others as well as an opportunity to provide good guidance, to also contribute to God's plan by helping a spirit being on the right track to start his or her life on the right track. And an interesting thing also, according to Spirit's book, is that even if it fails, even even if we quote unquote fail on our mission, it's still there's a contribution to the overall progress, because we have this concept of failure as defeat, and not necessarily a failure is not necessarily a defeat. A failure is an opportunity for transformation, it's an opportunity for knowledge, an opportunity for learning. Even in software development nowadays, there's a concept that is called fail often and fail fast. Fail often and fail fast. It's used in software development. It means that if your software, if your application has bugs, has defects, it's important that you identify those very soon. Or in other words, it's important that the application shows those symptoms very soon, and that you correct them very soon. So it's an interesting concept that we see in technology, that it in a sense also applies to us, believe it or not, as evolving spirits. Is whenever we fail, whenever we realize that we have shortcomings, let's address those as soon as possible. And we see here that as spirits, we are active and we can engage in various ways, but we can always serve God and contribute to the harmony of the universe. Again, some our contributions are immense. There are actually spirits that governed whole galaxies. There are spirits that are at such a high level that they can be assigned that level of responsibility. Some spirits, they govern planets, just like Jesus, for example. And some spirits have missions with nations, with countries, and some spirits with their homes, in what they contribute to their homes. And some spirits, at least all they got to do is just help themselves, at least pull themselves forward. So push themselves forward. So it depends on which level, but we all have our different missions. And regardless of our mission our missions are, we can always contribute to the betterment of the world. So I'd like to close here with some comments. So first of all, being a Christian, and especially being a Christian and a spiritist is challenging and demanding. It requires that time self-denial, because again, we're going to have to curtail several passions and several shortcomings, but also implies service as well. Also being active. Again, Jesus mentioned, "Go, I send you." So it means be active, being an active participant. And perseverance. Do not give up. Do not give up in our values, and apply what we know. And seeking an easy faith is a contradiction. There is no circumstance. And again, with of course we're having a spiritist conversation, but regardless of the belief system that you believe in, so there is no such thing as an easy faith. So that's a deception. Jesus' teachings, they do emphasize love, forgiveness, and a narrow path to salvation. So it requires us to have this love for others, love for our family members, for our friends, for our community, for those around us, even love for our enemies, as well, or those who consider themselves our enemies. Forgiveness, so we can keep always moving on. If we do not forgive, that truly holds us back. So forgiveness keeps us moving on, and helps us keep our service, keeps us serving others as well. It's a narrow path to salvation, so that we shouldn't not make any illusions here that it's going to be easy. It's a narrow path, but again, it's doable. We can suffer as Christians, but again, but the it comes comes with the job of being a Christian. But it leads to spiritual growth, and that's the most important part. And especially as spiritists, we see this from a higher position. And again, to finalize, Christianity and Spiritism, Christianity, and also, and that includes our Spiritism, is not just about hope and love. It is about hope and love, but also hard work and sacrifice as well. So thank you so very much for opening up this time. Let's have the conversation. And hey, Brad, do you have any questions or comments that we can talk about?
Thank you very much, Glaucio, for the wonderful insights and reflections you provided us today. Uh, Everyone, please stay with us for the Q&A session, which will start shortly after just a few announcements. There's a virtual course, Introduction to Mediumship. It is a free virtual course for beginners, provided by the U.S. Spiritist Federation, who is thrilled to invite individuals eager to explore the realm of spirit communication according to Spiritism. Check out the new course at the learn.spiritist.us website or scan the QR code on the flyer. And be certain to check out the continuing podcast-like series, Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, based on the works by Joanna De Angelis. A new episode appears every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is available on YouTube and Spotify. Are you curious about what lies beyond the veil of death? Join us on a profound journey of exploration as we delve into the mysteries of the afterlife with the new book, Transcendence, Life in the Hereafter by Giuseppe Korngold. It is available at spiritistbooks.us store. There is also a wonderful Spiritist app, Be My Hope, available from the App Store and Google Play. This app offers uplifting content in a collection of videos, daily messages, and audio materials. Download it today. And on the screen, you will note there is a QR code. If you want to help the United States Spiritist Federation produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, scan the QR code on screen for your donation. Now, let's start addressing the comments or questions from the audience. There's still time to send in yours. For the United States Spiritist Federation, what encouragement can we give to anyone who is poor in spirit?
That's an excellent question. And a definition here is what is poor in spirit. I'd like, before addressing the question, to make a comment about that. And when Jesus mentions poor in spirit, he was referring specifically to those individuals who are humble enough to recognize their shortcomings and have this attitude of viewing themselves, even though as spiritists that need to learn, but who have good hope, who have good intentions. Somebody might be poor from a physical standpoint or a societal standpoint, or might be affluent and be either humble or not. So that's why Jesus was specifically indicating those individuals who are poor in spirit. So those who have humility in our hearts. And what encouragement should we give to those who are poor in spirit? That whatever you do, whatever contribution you can do to others is very important. Being on the right path, even painful as difficult as it is, again, as spiritists, it provides us growth in the long run. No matter how difficult life might be for us today, whatever circumstance we might be going through today, those serve to us as building blocks. So as I am going through life, instead of having this attitude of prepotence and arrogance, which would not pay off in the long run, it is better for me to maintain my attitude of being a poor in spirit and have true humility so I can face the different stages of life. There's that famous saying, and the anecdote, the anecdote, the tale says that it was King Solomon, but it wasn't necessarily King Solomon, and indicates what should you do, and or what attitude should you do having life for good, both good moments and bad moments, and it is these two shall pass. So no matter what circumstance, life is going to give us these ups and downs, these moments of trouble and these moments of joy, but it's important for me to be to be poor in spirit first of all. So when I'm down, I recognize that whatever I'm going through right now, I have this humility to overcome that and see myself as a spirit that's going to grow with that experience. And also when things are looking up for me, when things are good, have this humility, being poor in spirit as well. So I can also indicate this is a good moment. Let's make the best thing that the best that I can do of this opportunity to enlighten myself, enlighten others as well.
Thank you very much for that. So, from the U.S. Spiritist Federation, how can we discern between true and false teachers?
So there's a very good explanation about that in the Gospel according to Spiritism, and it is very clear to indicate that you can classify a tree by its fruits. So any kind of teaching that is going to provide growth, that is in line with the teachings of the gospel, the true teachings of the gospel, the true teachings of Jesus, and of course, as Spiritists, the conversations that are in line with the teachings of Spiritism as well. Those would be characteristics of a true teacher, as opposed to one that we're classifying here as a false teacher. And the most important thing is also in the medium's book, Kardec emphasizes in the case of a medium, what it applies to anyone, the need for us to understand, because we need for us to study and to discern, study Spiritism in our case, and study the teachings of the gospel so that we can identify any kind of quote unquote red flags that might be in a teaching. So that's what I love about Spiritism, because it gives us this chance to always question different, and I question not in a bad way, but question to think about things in the back of my mind and understand, and to have this discernment. Okay, is this really good for me? Is it really in line with all the teachings of, again, of the gospel and Spiritism? Should I accept it or not? Now, if you're confronted with someone who is a quote unquote um, a bad teacher or a false prophet, again, you got to recognize also that you need to have the compassion for that individual, because there is whatever reason for someone who be teaching misinformation for you. That individual either doesn't know any better, actually has good intentions, but is trying to teach what he or she knows, or that individual has some sort of malice. In this case, you have to have also compassion for that person, because there are consequences, spiritual consequences, if not material consequences, but also spiritual consequences to any of our actions as well. So have compassion and to pray for that person, because that person needs to find a path of enlightenment.
Thank you. Very encouraging and good, helpful thoughts. From Andre Bevilacqua, what might wolves represent in today's world when sharing one's beliefs or values?
What wolves represent in today's world when sharing one's beliefs and one's values? So I'll try to take a jab at it. And Andre, if I do not answer your question, feel free to send another comment. So as in this case, we're spiritists, so we do have our values. So we share our values with others, with our actions, well, of course, with our conversations, which are very important, but most especially with our actions as well. And going back to compassion, also part of that is to understand the limit. I shouldn't say lack of a better word. Limit. I was going to say limitations, the shortcomings of others, the same way that I have shortcomings as well. And the point I want to make with that is that I hear some comments about friends of mine in certain circumstances. They say, "Hey, but this is so clear. How come that person does not understand that the lesson here? Or does how come the person keeps making the same mistakes, or still has those same beliefs?" And you can say, "Well, to me, it's obvious because due to my spiritual experience." And not only in this particular life, spiritual in this life, but spirit experience from previous lives, that becomes obvious to me based on all those teachings. My brothers and sisters are not in a different level. So having this sense, again, first of all, we have conversations, of course, but most importantly, we practice and we are true to our values. But we also have the compassion for others to understand that not everybody is going to be understanding our attitude and in our ideas as well. So having these two things, practicing what you, I shouldn't say practicing what you learn, and also having compassion and patience with others. I hope I answered your question, Andre.
That's good. Thank you, sir. And from the TBCEI, International Spiritist Council, if someone keeps rejecting our goodwill, do we continue or give them time to accept on their own?
It depends on the circumstance, because again, depends on the circumstance. A lot of times that individual really needs our goodwill. That individual doesn't understand, and that's why the concept of being a wolf is not necessarily somebody who's mean, means somebody who doesn't know any better. So being sometimes you have to continue giving assistance to that person, because a lot of times there is a need there. If there is a need, that person should not just give up on that individual. But again, also there can be a time when you got to give that individual time. Very important, there are several laws in the universe. Of course, the most to us, gravity is the most ubiquitous law, I should say. I shouldn't say ubiquitous. It's the most apparently law, because we are always experienced. But there are so many laws in the universe, and moral laws. And a very important moral law in the universe is the law of freedom. So all of us have, as spirits, we have our free will. So I should also respect somebody else's free will as well. So I try to help, but again, like the question indicates here, there could be some point that it is going to be beneficial for me. Actually, I would be in line with the laws of the universe to give that person some space to exercise his or hers or his or her free will, and to learn with that. And again, sometimes we're also so imperfect as well. So at the same token, so many people also give us their time as well. Jesus has been given his time to us. Of course, he came and he taught, and he keeps sending his emissaries, but he's been giving us our time for millennia. So what is it as giving us some time to our brothers and sisters when we reach that point as well? So allow them to grow with their own effort.
Truly, for all of us. Thank you. And from Daniel Santos, how does this warning relate to the current state of social, religious, political discourse?
I think that it is it was applied back then in Jesus' time. It was applied centuries after. It is applied today, and as our work progresses, it's gonna be applied for a very long time. It's one of those ageless messages. So as a lamb, I have to provide what I have good in me. I am, as I'm interacting with others. First of all, I should not isolate myself. I should be amongst my brothers and sisters, regardless of their values. Somebody's political, religious, ideological views, they are the result of they have a contribution from the environment from this life, but also contribution from past experiences, because we're mortal souls. This is not just our first experience, and I should say it's not our first religious, political, social experience. So whatever my belief system is, whatever my values are, they are being a construction for, for centuries or millennia. So as I interact with others, again, I still help others. Uh, I still give the good that I have. So I'm this emissary of enlightenment, emissary of light by my actions, by practicing. But again, that was also part of the humility and of the respect that I need to have for my brothers and sisters from their point of view. We are so imperfect on earth that none of us incarnated were none of us in general. Of course, there are some higher spirits, but they're the very minority. But none of us has the 100% truth. So even though I can see somebody's belief system and somebody's ideology, I can say, hey, this makes no sense. How come that individual doesn't see the flaws? But at the same time, that individual sees flaws in my ideology as well. So, and this is a good thing. It is a good thing, again, for us to live with others, to have this experience, and to respect others as well. Nobody has 100%. Nobody's 100% has 100% the truth, and we all learn from each other in different interactions, in interactions and different experiences as well. Again, whatever political situation we might be experiencing today, and that's the beauty of Spiritism, that teaches us that we're immortal souls. This is not the first time whatever ideology we had previous lives, and we have different, either the same ideologies or different ideologies, and we're going to evolve, and as we evolve, we're going to learn new things and have new ideologies as well. So, but that's the beauty of Spiritism, that it lets us to even view those quote unquote differences from a spiritual standpoint. And it's interesting, if allow me a few more seconds, uh, to digress on that, because if you really sometimes you might sit down with someone that quote unquote seems to be on the other end of the spectrum from an ideology standpoint, and you have a conversation with that individual, and you realize that there are synergies. There are truly there are several synergies, even though apparently they were not. But there's some points that we are in agreement. Everybody wants to see the good of whatever nation they live. Everybody wants to see the well-being, wants to look for the well-being of their community and their family. So all those things, they are good values, and we're all learning with each other. So we have to, of course, have our values, learn every day a little bit more, better ourselves, and respect others as well, and even learn with others, especially if they have different points of view.
Good thoughts, sir. Thank you. And another question from Andre Bevilacqua. What role does faith play in guiding our approach to difficult situations or individuals?
So faith is something amazing, because in the gospel according to Spiritism, it classifies faith in the human faith and the divine faith. So when I have the human faith, I have faith in myself. I have faith in my abilities, even though again I am not perfect, but I have some good qualities, and I have faith in me. And of course, now we have the divine faith, and I expand that not just as a spiritist, but whatever belief system it offers you. If it's a true belief system, a true religious belief system, really helps connect with God. What it's gonna give you is it's gonna give you this overarching view of whatever situation you're going through. As spiritists, we know about reincarnation, and we know about the spiritual world. We know about God as being this supreme intelligence who has His providence for us. So as I'm going through difficult times, I'm going to understand that what is it that I'm learning through that process that is going to contribute to me as a spirit, as a spirit, as I'm growing, and also that there is a master plan. God, it does not happen for a reason, or for it has happened for any reason. There is a reason behind it. There's a master plan, And the most important thing is what I'm going to extract. What's the lesson that I'm going to take from this? So we always have this sense of whenever bad things strike us, is why me, right? Why me? Why does it happen to me? Not why not happen to somebody else, my neighbor, for instance? And but the question should be, what's the lesson that I'm learning here? In an interesting aspect in life is that a lot of times you have the same situation recurring. We have the same type of problem that comes over and over again. So but then instead of asking why me, why is it happening, why is it happen to me, is what the lesson that I'm taking here. So again, faith faith in ourselves, so we know that we're going to overcome whatever situation is given to us. We are immortal spirits who have been through some very bad situations before, and we're still here, and we're going to go through some difficult situations in the future, definitely. But we can go through this. We've succeeded before, we're going to succeed again, and also have faith in this, in a spiritual life, in that we're mortal souls, that there's a lesson for us, and faith in God, and also faith in our spiritual benefactors. All of us, we have our quote unquote guardian angel, who is our spiritual guide, who's there with us. And it's always a good practice to pray for that, to pray for our to our spiritual guide in moments of trouble. So faith it gives us this combination to overcome, to be strong in those situations, and eventually overcome them.
Very hopeful. Thank you, Glaucio. And thank you very much, Glaucio, for your participation in this today. And many thanks to everyone who's watched today's Talk Live and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. Next Saturday, November 16th, we will host Flavio Zanetti speaking to us on the Spiritist view of Jesus, our beloved Christ. Glaucio, before we close the live, would you please offer a prayer?
Sure. At this moment, let's close our eyes in prayer and thank God, thank Jesus for all the messages that had were conveyed to us in the past through the Old Testament, the New Testament. That Spiritism also brought to us in an enlightened manner. Those are also important. But also, let's develop in ourselves the wisdom, the strength, the conviction, so we can apply those in the different circumstances. Life is not always easy here on Earth. As a matter of fact, there are so many troubles in planets like the Earth, so many difficulties that we go through. There are good moments, but there are challenging moments as well. So, but the most important thing is how we apply those teachings in those circumstances, so that we can grow, we can enlighten ourselves, and we can even, if possible, help enlighten others. May we all have a great rest of day, great rest of week, and may God's peace be with us. So be it. Thank you.